Is there anything that sticks out with you that worked well for you? One of the games, the drills, the sequences, whatever.
Well, transition games I think work the best because they have to think and make breakout plays. You don't do a 2-on-1 and then the puck dies. You do a 2-on-1. D's got to get the puck, make a pass, and it goes the other way.
Yeah.
And you can alternate that. A D jumps up or forwards back check. And so transition games by far the most effective system I used was is the torpedo, but you got to recruit. At Mount Riley got to recruit players, right? So that the left back and the torpedo's got to be, it's kind of half. It's like the midfielder in soccer.
Yeah.
Got to be like good defensively, but also be able to be pretty good on offense. Because it's a really well balanced way to play. But I don't do that with kids because it restricts. You do that when you're getting paid to win.
Now, over the years in the NHL, they've tried to pair an offensive defenseman with a defensive defenseman. Is that the same? Or is it the
torpedo?
No, I'm just saying, if you're using a torpedo, you've got to do that. But I'm just saying today in the NHL, is everybody going to
that always take
one a defensive type and an offensive type, or 50-50 of each, or is it that big a deal?
My idea with the torpedo, I had one girl that was all-star 3 years in a row, played right D. The right D is an offensive player because they joined the attack.
Yeah.
They're on their side, basically part of the 3 players in there. The left wing has got to be a really good defensive forward, but they also join the attack on their side. And then the left D is a stopper, the fullback, like in soccer.
Yeah.
They're always on the puck side, so they get lots of 1-on-1s, 2-on-1s, and they, like Terry Johnson, when he got traded to Calgary from St. Louis, they put him with Paul Reinhardt because they needed a really good defensive defenseman, and he played the left side in it. Because Calgary did that left wing thing with Bob Johnson. They went to the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they basically used a torpedo. You call it all kinds of different things. So yeah, you really have roles in a torpedo, and then your 2 forwards, your 2 torpedoes, can be really good offensive players. Their only job defensively is to cover the points. Get back hard, come to the slot, and cover the points.
Yeah.
So it's if you got the right players, it works really well. But like I said, in college, I recruited the players, so I brought players in for certain positions. And we won over 5 years, 71% of the games, and we're in the finals for the 5 years.
Was that because you of the torpedo, and you were able to recruit players that fit the model?
Yeah, a lot. I had just had players that suited that style.
Yeah.
But it's hard when you're picking kids, and I don't. I used to use it with the Flyers. We did pretty good. That's when there were 3 AAA teams.
Yeah.
So it was, you weren't going to win the provincials with that group, even though the one year we upset the team that only lost 2 games all year. But then this team took my best player out, and so we lost the next round.
Tom, I remember you were coaching Bantam U15, I think, one year, and I think you used the torpedo that year. Do you remember with the Royals?
Yeah, we did.
What was your take on that year and that system? Did you do it because you had the good type of forwards or the good type of D that could play that fullback position?
Well, we had, I had that little guy that's playing the NHL now,
Yeah.
He was a really good offensive D. No, it worked really well. We outshot every team, outplayed most teams, but I had one goalie that let in 1 out of 5 shots, another goalie that let in 1 out of 7 shots. So we had to give up 20 shots. You got 5 goals or 4 goals against you, so you had to score a lot of goals to win games.
Yeah.
So it was that was incredibly poor goaltending that year. But then the one kid ended up playing major junior for 3 years. That was his second year of goal.
Yeah.
So he was lost in the net, but he was a good athlete. He learned how to play goal and became really good. But the other kid played, I think he went back to community and played level 4 the next year. But I took him because the goalie company said he was good. And I said, well, geez, I'm seeing letting goals from outside the blue line. And they said, oh, no, he's really good. But the danger of getting a company is that they promote the kids they train so they can brag that they're all playing AA and all this. And they're not always truthful. So that's what happened that year.
Tom, the GHC is looking for a U13 AA female coach. You have any ideas?
Oh, geez, I don't know. I think Emily would be really good, but I don't think she has time. She's still student teaching and all that stuff. I wouldn't like to lose her, but I mean, she would. I don't really know. You know, I can't think of anybody that wants, that I know that wants to give up that kind of time. Like Jim Curry, I play hockey with him. He'd be fantastic. He coached the Hitmen there and stuff. But I don't know. I don't think he wants to give up that much time.
Time's the biggest thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a huge. Yeah, it's humongous. I mean, you're giving up in this Bantam, it's 5 days a week. You get 2 practices, 2 games, a dry land. Then there's sometimes there's other things that happen too, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't really know. There's probably young guys looking for a team out there, or girls.
Well, there was a number of fathers that assisted, some of which could have, are capable of head coaching in terms of game knowledge.
Yeah.
And I think they're really wary because of the time commitment. And it's unfortunate, but that's sort of what you compete with when you get sports schools and they've got full-time coaches. They've got the time because they're full-time.
Yeah.
And I think that's we've got the people that do coach in our system. They're full-time coaches like yourself. You don't have much to worry about, but I always seem to go back to, as a school teacher, I found the time. I could work the schedule out in terms of practices and games, and it was possible. But you
That's
really,
why I went back to junior high.
Yeah.
Because in high school, I wasn't the department head.
Yeah.
So they told me when I practiced.
Yeah.
So really coach hockey. So I go to junior high and I did the same. I had my school practices that allowed me to do the other practices. I practiced.
How many years were you teaching before you started to coach outside of the school?
Well, I taught Calgary Catholic for 29 years. And then I took early retirement at 55, and the Mount Royal women's job was up. I interviewed and I got that job. We just won provincials 3 out of 4 years with Jim's teams. And I just, and before that I was helping coach University of Calgary men for 8 years. So I got the job at Mount Royal and did that for 5 years, and I taught at Mount Royal too. And then the Red Bulls called me. So
you coach, when you coached at SAIT and the University of Calgary and Mount Royal, you had retired from teaching, or finished?
No, I coached at SAIT in the 80s, but I was teaching at St. Greg's.
Yeah.
And then I was assistant coach at UC for 8 years. And I was teaching at that time through the 90s, for 8 years in the 90s.
Yeah.
I was teaching at that time. But they practiced at like 4:15 or something like that. So I'd have morning practices. And I think the game night, I didn't go to UFC. I didn't go on Tuesdays, I think it was.
Yeah.
Coaching coaching school team. So I worked it out that I could do both. And then after early retirement, then I went to Mount Royal, and I was a head coach there. I was head coach at SAIT for 3 years too, but I was a head coach at Mount Royal, and I taught the coaching class. That's what I was doing for my job. So, and then the Red Bull called me, and I went. Well, I always wanted to do that, so I went and coached there for a year.
Did they call you, or did you have an application form that you sent in, or
Called me out of the blue.
transpire?
They did a search, and they identified me as one of the top skills coach in North America, and I think it's because of stuff I did at the Edge. Well, first of all, they knew about Danny Heatley and Mason Raymond and Jeremy Colleton, and then at the Edge, 2 of those guys were drafted in the first round, and somehow they associated me with that, and they offered me. They said they identified 4 guys in North America, and I was at the top of the list. It was my job to take or not take, so I took it. Kathy, I'd been offered things in the 90s, but no, Kathy didn't want to go. None of the kids wanted to go. So all the kids were left home. And she said, well, go for a year. You've always wanted to do this, so I did. So that's how that came about. And it was a great experience.
Of all the extracurricular experiences you've had, what was your best and why?
Well, that was a great experience, because I was working with coaches from all over the world, and like Paget, who worked the NHL for a long time, and Vladimir Ursinov, who was coach of Russia. You don't get a chance to work with guys like that very often. And it would have been perfect if Kathy was still working, and so she didn't go, because it would have been absolutely perfect if she would have gone. But as far as the coaching, and that was, an absolutely beautiful place, and traveling around Austria, driving through the Alps for games, it was like a tourist bus, So that was pretty darn good. What about you?
Pardon?
What about your experiences? What are your best ones?
I learned the most from all of my teaching experience, because when I was coaching in high school, I was involved with the national team with Dave King, And I really always got in touch with the coach education program. So I got exposed to things that I never would have been because Dave sent me to those seminars. It's sort of like you, all the worlds you've gone to and all the speakers you've sat in on, and probably, like Bill Beanie and his small area games idea. I'm sure your first encounter with him might have had you go to a more game like approach, and it reinforced transition, which is the game. Decisions will occur within those moments.
I think I got that more from Johanny and Erka.
Okay. Well, you were talking about your favorite drill, Tom. And I have to say, working with you, and we did Urka's continuous 2-on-1 drill.
Yeah.
I remember the way Urka drew it up. There was a 2-on-1 with a direct attack, and the two wingers that were going to go the other way were waiting at the top of the circle.
It was passive.
Yeah. And so it was 2-on-1, get the puck to the winger, and away they go. And I think it was with you that we talked about and maybe experimented with having those wingers not sit and wait, but I know I had them go into the center circle and then back check through the middle to make that transition. That was the first phase. And in other words, it wasn't just a 2-on-1 and when you get the puck to your standing stationary forwards attack, it was come back and help your D. So you're doing transition from defense to offense going the other way. That was the first phase and I think I was picking up on that when I worked with the national women's team, but it didn't happen overnight. It was like a few years where I said, oh, this is a European drill. They don't work on transition.
Well, I saw Erka do it.
Well, they didn't bring the guy back into the D zone. He stood and waited.
Do that too.
Yeah.
I saw, like, the first one is passive and you get the flow, right?
Yeah.
They're waiting there and it's a new 2-on-1. It's basically, but then I also saw him bring the guys in and cover him because I went to Finland and he brought me there 3 summers. So we talked about, I don't know if I saw him do it or he, talked about it. And then, he did that too. It's kind of a progression. And then you can have, one of the D join the rush too, or one D join the rush and one forward back check. You can do all kinds of permeations of it. Yeah. And I did that all the time I was at Mount Royal. That was probably a good deal of my practices at Mount Royal were transition games.
Like I thought Urka's 2-on-1 continuous was the best drill ever. As the third phase is what you just said. The D doesn't stand in the neutral zone and wait for the rush. The stage is that D can keep the puck in play at the ringette line or lower, and they can actually join the attack.
Well, it basically becomes a scrimmage that the players are rotating in.
Yeah.
There's no whistles, and the beauty of transition games is you're no longer the traffic cop blowing the whistle. You can stand at the, get the defense, your defenseman coach to stand with them and forward, and when they come back, ask what happened there, or why'd that work, or talk to them when they come back. So it frees you to coach.
Yeah.
And if you keep score, it ups the intensity. So that's the beauty of transition games, but they're the least used things I see in Canada. And I didn't see a lot of them.
Yeah.
Pierre used some and Rail used some, but when they had me run part of the practice for the pro team, I always used a transition game. because they were already doing terrific drills.
Yeah. Well,
I just sent you 4 drills that I just did this week.
okay, well, Thomas's continuous 2-on-2, that's a continuous transition drill related to neutral zone. And it became sort of a feature drill with most NHL teams that Thomas worked with. And I think he worked with 4 or 5. And some of them added it to their pregame warm-up drill or their pre-practice drill. And the players just love it. And, having worked with GHC the last few years, that drill is something that I feel just would help players and the coaches appreciate transition and the natural figure it out element of when to pass, where to pass, how to support, think the game. It's game-like, period.
Contrived as most drills are, right? Where the
Yeah.
coach, you do this, you do this, you do this. No, you create the situation, and now the D, everybody's got to read the play to make it happen on both offense and defense.
Yeah.
And usually, like what I do is I add dump ins to it. You don't pass to the D, but you dump in, and maybe you say how much pressure you want them.
Yeah.
Maybe a half pressure, so they're there and the sticks are in the lane, but it turns into a transition game if you make it full out. Basically, it's a 2-on-2 continuous. So,
well, you asked me what was a favorite drill. And when I coached the major junior league one year, I was doing deliberate regroups. Typical D to D to the middle or quick up or whatever. And then eventually I thought, I'm going to just go in there and make them think. And I would pressure. And when I did that by myself, it wasn't the players pressuring, it was me. And it worked. In fact, our team played the games better after that. And I've always noticed that if you do something game-like in a practice, that it will show up in the game. And that one drill, with me providing a resistance, had a huge payoff. I just saw them think, figure things out, do things instinctively, apply their skills, make great decisions.
Yeah. Well, if you take away, maybe you take away the center, then they pass a wing.
Yep.
Take away the wing, and they pass the center.
Yep.
And that makes them think.
For the people that listen to this, I'm thinking last year of every one of our coaches at the U18 and 15 levels, and even the 13 levels would benefit from transition drills and games more than deliberate drills. And Tom, I have to share with you, watching spring hockey this year, I only went to a couple of each team's practice, both U15 teams, and the first part of their practices were drills. And this time of year in the spring, they've had enough drills. But when they went to games, small area games, the players looked really good. They got excited.
Yeah.
And I thought it was real purposeful practice.
I don't think they always have to be small area either. They
Yeah.
be full.
No, I agree with you, but at least the game, you got decisions being made.
Oh yeah.
In practice. So I sent a text to each of the coaching staff suggesting to don't do any deliberate drills, just play games. And I should have added the word transition games, because really games are all about transition.
They are, but I think the start of practice everybody needs to handle the puck a little bit. The goalies need to get some shots. So that's the purpose of them, is you don't spend that much time, but just like before a game, you have a warm up, right? You don't just start the game when you step on the ice.
Yeah.
So maybe you take 15 minutes to do different things, and then go to games. And one thing that people do not do, and this is something that USO really pushed, you have tournaments, and you make teams, and you have tournaments, and they play each other, and and you keep track of the tournaments. So you can have 3-on-3 tournaments or all this, this sort of thing. And I picked up when I coached with Brent there at SAIT. He had the Russian scrimmage and the power play game that I use a lot. And the Russian scrimmage, you blow the whistle so many times. If you blow it 3 times, 3 players jump out from each team. And the team with the puck, when the whistle blows past a player coming on, or you can have them pass back to the goalie. And then on the power play game, they take turns having these outnumber situations. So you start with one team's got the power play, so they get a 1-on-1, then 2-on-1, then 2-on-2, then 3-on-2, 3-on-3, 4-on-3, 4-on-4, 5-on-4, 5-on-5, and you can even do 6-on-5. Practice that, and then the other team gets their chance, and you keep score. And I find that really a good, that players compete really hard in.
So you use the term power play practice, and then you went into 1-on-1, 2-on-1.
Well, the one team is the one that gets the outnumbered situation. So it's just a name for it.
They have the advantage.
Yeah, they always have the advantage, and they go through all those situations.
Yeah.
6-on-5, you have to have lots of players.
Yeah.
And they go through those situations. You keep score, and then the other team gets it, and you keep score, and it's a game.
Yeah.
It probably takes 15 minutes, but they really work hard when they play it.
Yeah. Now, I'm just wondering, generally speaking, coaches are conditioned to structure. And traditionally, they'll practice 5-on-0 power play structures and puck movement. And then when they practice, they might do the same. What you've done is you've taken outnumbered situations. You always have a man advantage. And you're figuring out how to use that time and space and create it and use it. That makes sense, but it's so difficult for people who've coached all their lives a certain way to suddenly just use a game progression like that. It's almost like, and maybe even parents say, well, you're not practicing power play. And the pressure sort of ripples down to where you end up doing a static.
Well, I think you do all that. You do the static just so that they know what the options are, right?
Yeah.
Because they're not born with this knowledge.
Yeah.
You prioritize knowledge that a lot of people think people are born with this knowledge. You do that, but you don't, after you've done it, you don't have to keep doing it. I think one of the best things I saw the Flames doing it, and then the U20 team was doing that 2 summers ago, is one team gets an offensive zone face off. They go through maybe 30 seconds of options. Maybe they're doing the power play, but they could be doing, the forecheck and cycling and stuff too.
Yeah.
And then you blow the whistle, they dump it down, and they go back to get the puck breakout. And in this situation, penalty killer, the 4 penalty killers jump out and they force, and then it's full on for maybe 30, 45 seconds, and they play 5-on-4 under, both teams are pressured. And then you go through and you just rotate. The other team gets a face off at the other end next time, and they get the. And you can practice not only the power play, but you can practice, like I was saying to Jim the other day. I said it's a great way to practice face-off plays. So everybody, so go and run a face-off play for 30 seconds so everybody understands it. Then dump down and play 5-on-5.
Yeah.
And the other team get it. It's a great way to teach that intermittent learning is the most powerful. If everybody's focused for 30 seconds, they learn a lot more than droning on for 10 minutes. So, hi, Peter.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are we?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm all right. I'm all right. All right.
Forward you the drills I just sent Wally. I just did 4 this week from the Canada's teams for getting ready for the world. The year after COVID, they didn't have the World Championships.
Right.
So they put them all up in the summer. So all the Canada teams practiced here. And so I watched, I took like 130 videos.
Wow.
Going through, trying to do 1 a day. So I just sent you 4 I've done this week.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. It's awesome. Hey, I have a question for both of you guys. I was thinking about this with the playoffs going on. And so Florida's down in the game 2-0 to the Rangers. Storm back, outscore them. I think it was 4-2. I think 4 unanswered goals. Last night, Dallas is up 2-0 over Edmonton. Storm back with 5 unanswered goals. We've all been in those games where you're up 2-0 early.
Yeah.
Part of you feels good as a coach, and then the other part, you sort of feel like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. So interesting. I mean, on both sides, right? You've got, I'm up 2-0, and it's the semifinals, and I'm going to go to the cup. How do I coach that? Or as a player, what's my mentality to just keep my foot on the gas and keep adding to it, as opposed to letting a team just turn around and just dominate me when I was the one that was dominating? It's so interesting to me that at this level, at those stakes, that you can't find a way to counteract that in some way. I mean, I guess that's why we play the game, right? But it's just so interesting that, man, that those teams, like, give credit to those teams. You're down 2-0, and all of a sudden you find some way to storm back and just dominate them. That's pretty impressive.
Well, I think the first 10 minutes of games is always, you're in the other team's rink. That's a danger, but both times they got behind. But you get ahead because you're winning the races and battles, right? So how that you keep winning the races and battles even when you have the lead, and when teams are as even as all these teams are, these last 4 teams, every team is really good. So I think it's human nature when you got the lead to not be as intense. That's a real, you can see it's tough on all these teams to get that lead, and they just take, the other team also increases their intensity too, right?
It becomes that immovable force, right? And the immovable object meet, but something actually has to give. It's just so interesting to me and so fascinating that you can't maintain that.
Yeah.
You can't maintain that. It's just something. I mean, like I said, as a coach, I think we've all been there where we feel good about being up early, and then part of us is saying, well, maybe we don't feel so good about being up early.
Yeah, it is a tough situation, because when the other team's just as good as you, and they weren't really competing as hard, now they up it. Because that's what we see. I mean, all these teams are good enough to win.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's just
every game, either team could have won, basically, right?
Yeah, I think these 4 teams playing right now, have been better matchups, or some of the best matchups, at least, that I've seen in the recent years.
Yeah. And yeah, that, it is really different that it is hard to keep it going for sure.
One of the things I did years ago with U15 team, and I think it was back in the time that we used to say a 2-0 I used to say there's the only thing worse than a 2-goal lead is a 3-goal lead, because the instinct is to relax, not maintain that nervous edge that you need to play well. And it relates to what's an ideal performance state in the psychology of coaching. And as we all know, you've got to play the game. And I use the term like it's a tie score. And so I actually use that concept. What's the score? And they would say, so. I said, no, it isn't. It's a tie score. Or we're down a goal. You have to almost get in a state of mind, and I've played with it, to no real success at all, because they're human. And some players will respond to it, some players won't, but most of the time it leads to losing hair or your hair turning grayer, because it's just that it's a natural human response to relax when you score a goal. What I find more interesting is how many teams, after they're scored on, respond right away with a quick goal. And, it's similar in a game. A team almost scores, dominates the play. The other team goes the other way and scores because they got outnumbered. They took a risk. They did these kind of things. But I think that's part of the beauty of the game. It's, I don't think it's things we can have much control of. You can try to influence it, but I think that when I look at all the teams play now, I would have to say that Dallas is the one, in my mind, regardless if they win or lose or they're behind or ahead, they seem to play with the same edge. The other teams, I think, go the other way. They're normal. And I in that sense, I think Dallas's work ethic, consistent effort, and I think it's the nature of some of their talent, their experienced talent, like Shen is the particular player in question. They always have a good shift after a goal is scored. When they come out there, they're the players that respond. So it's a real good question, Peter. I'm glad you brought it up. And I am enjoying the playoffs. I thought about it this morning and I said, the talent is so good. The difference is going to be goaltending in the end. And I think the Oilers have the gap in talent that other teams don't have. In other words, their best players are quite a bit more capable of scoring more often. And they've learned to play a more 200-foot game.
Well, I think also the coaches learn how to coach instead of playing them half the game. So you play half the game, you can never go 100%.
Yeah.
You're too tired. The last night was the first time I've seen them actually use 4 lines. Dallas uses 4 lines all the time.
Yeah, we deal with it in minor hockey all the time, Peter, and I don't know what it's like out there, and you're part of the United States, but it's just a very common, more common than most often, teams just shorten the bench and get their best players out there right away, not at late in periods or late in games. They get out there right away, and then the other young players that need an opportunity to experience those situations don't even get exposed to them. And the mindset of everyone is that, well, if you don't shorten the bench, you're not coaching to win. And I think that's sort of I don't know, there's got to be a term with it. It's just I don't know if oxymoron is the term or not, but that's the way it is. That's the way minor hockey coaching is, and that's why kids that want to play just to have fun, they don't even get an opportunity to play situations, so they don't develop. And over time, they accept their roles. They might go back to less competitive hockey where it's more fun because they get to play. But the same's true at that level. And Toronto is the same type of team as Edmonton. And it's your ability to, I think having more talent is more difficult. Most difficult.
Well, it's harder to keep everybody happy, right? Especially at the pro level.
Yeah. But I think when you work there a number of years and you're recruiting players, it depends on how you can reinforce the mindset and then play with bench management to the point where everybody feels valued. Some players are on, some are off, and your ability to get the right players out there at the right time. And I think Tom's used the term more often that given nights, some of the third and fourth line players are going to be the ones that are more productive. And Tom created his best player, played with the fourth line forwards and U15 girls. And that chemistry of that group, she became a leading scorer in that game. The top player who before playing with more talented players was not sharing the puck as much. So it's the beauty of coaching, I think. It's what's the right stuff? What's the right amount? What's the right time? And that's the question you asked. And we'll see who figures it out. Myself, I'm cheering for Edmonton because being in Alberta and knowing what they've gone through over the years, and I sympathize with that talent spread. I think they've got a team mentality now, and they're willing to buy into that playing without the puck mentality. So you've got McDavid blocking shots and that type of thing going on. And let me tell you, it rubs off on everybody watching on the bench when they see your best player sacrificing himself and buying into that. And it's hard for them because all their lives, they're the ones that have been double shifted. So we can't imagine what it's like to adapt to 45-second shifts every fourth line, and I don't see them out as often, but I tell you what, when they do get out, you sure notice them because they're on the ice, they've got the puck, they're creating scoring chances, and they're the most dangerous, and I believe leading the scoring in the playoffs, Draisaitl and McDavid. So it's the art of coaching. But listen, I've before we started, I had written down things. I'm trying to get hold of Margot Page, who is the head coach at Brock University. And Peter, she coached in the 2006 Torino Olympics, and she's coaching at Brock right now. 20 years of coaching, but back in 2006, she actually did work on leadership training for athletes with the national team, and she's done it with her university team. So I wanted to ask her some questions, and I'm still trying to get a hold of her and nail down a time. But I got a question for both of you. Over all the years of coaching that you've had, and I'm going to ask you this, Peter. Can you recall who your best captain was and what the qualities were in him that made he or she the best captain?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a couple that I would put in that category, and they were communicative with both myself, my staff, and the other players. They sincerely actually cared about their teammates. They were advocates for their teammates, and they were very good at, again, with the communication piece, taking the message that we gave as a staff and perhaps finding another way to communicate that to the locker room, and also finding ways to communicate from the locker room with us. So they were completely invested in the team. It was never ever about them. It was always about us, because the terms were always us, we, the boys, the guys. It was always about the team. So communication, really good ability to advocate, and then the ability to actually articulate their points. I probably had two I would put in that category over many years.
Were they extroverts?
No, they weren't extroverts. They weren't really that real type A personality, but they weren't really quiet individuals either. They were they were willing to speak up, but they would speak up when it made sense, and they weren't individuals who would talk just to hear themselves talk. They didn't have that. So when they did speak up, the team would listen to what they had to say, because they knew that it was sincere.
I know it's a while ago, Peter, but do you remember how they were selected and how they got to that position where they could exercise their leadership skills and work with the coaching team like they did? There's that sort of a team within a team. It's the leadership group. You recall the process of identification, decision making to finally decide who the people would be?
Yes. We would always reach out to the team as a whole, and basically we did a voting to see who they thought would be a good leader, and I think it's the choices that they made were choices that we really did agree with, and I'll give ourselves credit as a staff, because we spent a lot of time on leadership, explaining what good leaders are, explaining what it takes to be a leader, how you reach out, how you communicate, the different ways that you use the tools that you have, the verbal communication, the physical aspect of your work ethic on the ice. We talked about all of those things with the entire team, not just the leaders. So I think when it came time to select leaders, naturally they had those parameters in their heads that they used, and it typically worked out pretty well.
Peter, what age are we talking about here?
My most recent is the NCAA. Again, youth hockey never really had captains. Didn't see a need or a point of that, like U13, even U15 really. In prep school, our head coach, he's the one, he decided who would be the captains of the team. So didn't really have a whole lot of input at that point. But collegiately, that's what I did. I made sure that as a team, we learned what leadership was. And again, like I said, that worked out pretty well when it came time for them having a point of reference and understanding it and essentially, I guess, agreeing with what we were trying to teach them.
Tom, we've heard, others on that have been on with us talk about, and Peter mismentioned, no need for captains at U13, and he even added U15. What's your thoughts on what age can you do it where you'll be able to nurture leaders, grow leaders, and let them help you with your task of leading the team?
Well, I believe in captains. I believe that you need to be able to, somebody's got to be kind of the connection between the two. So what I do in minor hockey is I ask the players, and one at a time, not in front of anybody, give me the name of 5 players you think could be good captains, and also the coaches. So maybe the coaches have someone in mind, like if nobody said that player, it would be a mistake to, or only 10% of the players. So try to get a kind of a view there. I like having captains at college level. My most success at college level was appointing the captain, just on how they behaved. They had to be one of the better players, So, whether, can't say that I'm right, but that's just my opinion about having captains, and somebody has to have letters on in our league, or they're not supposed to talk to the referees. The referees come before, a lot of referees come before the game and say, if there's any problem, send one of your players with a letter. So it's kind of a thing. You could rotate, I guess, captain, but you have to have someone on there. But it's really hard to rotate captains when they have to sew on the C and take off the C, and how do you glue it on, or what do you do if you're going to change all the time? So I like having captains.
Maybe Velcro.
Yeah, I sometimes we'll have captains that say, okay, these captains are going to be till Christmas time, and we'll revisit it, and maybe they'll stay the same, or maybe they'll be different. So I don't know. I think it all depends on the group, whether there's a right and a way or a wrong way to do it.
Yep.
Because I've had some bad captains too. That so if that can really be detrimental to your team if you have a bad captain.
Yep.
So
now, I don't recall the teams I've coached, which aren't many. But if you pick them, then it's got to be on you, because did you pick them, or were they pre-picked, or were they the best player?
I said both.
Both, eh?
I've done both, and my most success at college was just me picking them.
Yeah.
And I've done the other, asking for opinions of people.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if there's a right and a wrong answer. It depends who you end up with, I guess.
Well, I think the purpose of having this conversation, Peter, and thank you for bringing up the fact you mentioned what age, and you didn't think U13 or 15 it was really going to make much difference, but really the biggest leader of the team is you, the head coach. And nurturing the group and developing the young people to appreciate the importance of leadership. And I think that's one of the things that one of the executive GHC has brought up with me is the importance of appreciating that role, leadership development, not just the captains, but the coaches themselves, and understanding, are they walking the talk of leadership and coaching in terms of a development philosophy and being competitive and wanting to win, and getting everybody to buy in. Same thing as the Oilers, same thing as Toronto. You've got a discrepancy, who wears their letters, and now the Oilers captain appears to be buying in, and maybe that's unconscious, not conscious. I think everybody wants to win and do whatever it takes. I don't think anybody wants to play too much. But when they're called upon and expected to, and they're paid more, it sort of, in professional hockey, creates a bit of a separation. But in minor hockey, I think we're doing a great harm by picking the best player to be captain and overplaying the best player, because it's not really developing the best team to play the right way to get the best result. So
Yeah, well, I agree too with your point you made in development of the coaching staff as well. And that is a responsibility of that head coach. I think for me, there's always been, because I've always been a little bit older than my assistants, for me, it's been fairly natural to work with them and try to mentor and teach them the whole piece about what we feel like leadership is and how we go about it. And I think one of the issues you run into that I've seen is, you get a younger staff overall, maybe there's only 5 or 7 years in between the head coach and his assistant coaches. So you're either early 30s to mid 20s, and everybody's trying to figure it out. So it's kind of tough, I think, sometimes for that head coach to teach what leadership is, or even realize that they should be doing that, because they're trying to figure so many things out at the college level. And then at the youth hockey level, here anyway, it's very typically, I'm not talking like the AAA teams, but your town teams, you've got somebody that maybe had some hockey experience, maybe they didn't, and then they've got other people helping them that are in that same boat. So they're all trying to figure that out. So that becomes a pretty big challenge there, unless you have someone trying to teach them and mentor them as to what leadership is and what they should be looking out for. So I see that here with the youth, the town youth teams. And like I say, collegiately, it seems like, especially at the Division II, Division III level, typically they're pretty young head coaches. So they're still trying to figure it out themselves. So it's a tough task for them to not only teach the players that and bring them on board, but actually teach a staff when you yourself are trying to get the thing figured out.
I guess so a question related to this is, and it might be X's and O's, it might be behavioral coaching. What have you guys done that you learned from, that you changed, did differently over the years of coaching? Whether it's dealing with leadership or dealing with players individually or positionally, tactically. Is there something that you went through that was sort of a wake-up call? I have a couple of stories, but just curious about yourselves, because everything certainly doesn't go perfectly. It's a bumpy road. Anybody?
Well, I know that when I didn't get renewed at SAIT in the 80s, I was really crestfallen.
Yeah,
Because college hockey was pretty big at that time too.
yeah,
You know, in the paper, there were write-ups of our games and everything,
yeah,
you know. And I really had to think. And I decided if I'm going to coach, I have to get better. So, you know, I wanted to coach with people at, you know, I ended up coaching at U of C where I could coach with people like Willie Desjardins and Mike Johnson and Slava Leonard and Terry Johnson, all these guys, NHL owned or whatever. And, you know, I learned from them, and that was kind of my mindset, that I had to learn from people. And I started going watching the Hockey Canada, taking those videos of stuff I do now to build up my toolbox of things I could do in the ice with players. And you know, so that was like 1988, I think. So that was because I was deciding, do I want to coach or not? You know, I was already pretty busy at my school and had kids and this kind of stuff. So that's kind of was significant with me.
Yeah, I agree with Tom there, the importance of self-educating, if you will, putting yourself, surround yourself with people that you can learn from. I know back when I used to do some things in the summers with the Hartford Whalers. So after summer hockey schools and that, so I got to know some of the players, coaches fairly well. And one coach in particular was really great. Kevin McCarthy was the assistant with the Whalers at that point. We had good conversations, and then he actually coached in the American League with a team called the Beast of New Haven, who had this incredibly mascot that was kind of like a dragon, kind of like a gargoyle. It was just crazy. But he was great because he would let me come to his practices and actually sit in the room with he and his assistant coaches before the practices. And I just sat there and tried to be the best sponge I could. And I wasn't sure once I got on the ice, I was looking at some drills for sure. But my focus was on how he was approaching his staff, how his staff was taking things in. Then when the practice were being run, I was paying, I think, more attention to the roles that he had and the staff had on the ice and their interactions with players. So that's where I think I learned, hopefully, to become a better coach. Watching someone at that level that was successful, how they interacted, how with their staff, how their staff interacted amongst each other, and the real human piece of that puzzle.
Peter, how old were you? And at the time, what were you coaching when you went into that self-education thing and took advantage of the opportunity? Tom sought it out. He was, sort of crestfallen. And I didn't know this, Tom, but I never thought of, gee, how did you get involved with the UFC? Why did you get involved with the UFC? And
Well,
it's
that was
thing.
random. That was random. I wasn't coaching that one year,
Yeah,
the Olympic year, and I ran into Mike Johnson, and he was doing his masters, but I coached against him for 4 years at the college level, and he was helping Willie with UFC, and it was just a random thing, and he said, "Well, you should be coaching. I'll talk to Willie." And, I joined the staff as an assistant coach then. If I didn't run into him, I probably would have never ended up at UFC because I didn't know Willie.
Peter, what about you?
So for me at that point, I was coaching ACHA college hockey, which is club level hockey. It was just before I began prep school coaching, so I was probably 40. I would say I was probably around 40 years of age. Had been around again. We talked a little bit in the past, been around it, but that's when I felt I knew that I want to take this as far as I can possibly go with it. And how do I do that? How do I make myself better? And I think like that old saying, right? Good players make good coaches. I think being around good coaches made me a better coach. I realized that. I recognized that fact that I had a lot to learn, but more importantly, I wanted to learn. So I put myself in that. I was able to put myself in that position.
Well, myself, I think coaching high school sports was like, you sort of were off the seat of your pants. You went on your sports knowledge, but we did have the advantage of an understanding of teaching and communication and the importance of that. So I think, Tom, we had a foundation that went with the fact we were educated teachers. So I learned, and I think the bottom line here, Peter and Tom, is the word learn. Every year I coached, I learned. I coached a sport that I never knew anything about and got better at it. But I had the philosophy of, I really don't know much, and admitted that to the players. But I did make a concerted effort to learn, whether it was observing people, but more often when you're in school sports, you're on your own. And you can talk to people, you can observe, you can go to clinics. So I got involved in that education stream outside and above the actual coaching. And in our province, they provide an awful lot of educational opportunities, and I took advantage of them. And every course conductor clinic I went to, and the course conductor clinic is a person who delivered coaching clinics, and I was one of them. They educated us well. And I often took things back that I experimented with in school sports that I had taken away from clinics or from classes that Dave King sent me to with the national team that he couldn't attend because he was too busy coaching. And I incorporated those modules into my phys ed curriculum and actually experimented with them with teams I coached in school and in the community. So I'd have to say the biggest thing here is, what are we doing to get better? And even at our ages, what are we doing to get better?
Well, the thing that really probably influenced me more than anything is just at my end of the tenure coaching the men's team at SAIT, I met Johanny. George brought him in, and I went to all these guys George brought in from Europe. They gave 2-week, 40-hour seminars. And we hit it off, and we were both phys ed teachers, and he was like Gordie Howe of Finland, kind of the guy that built the whole coaching structure and everything. And, and we started working together on a project he was doing. And then he brought me to Finland, and he brought me to Finland through the 90s. I went there 12 times, and Yursinov was coaching TPS, who I later coached with in Salzburg, and had me as a guest coach. In fact, I took one of those Hockey Alberta. We put together a checking thing. You were doing it, and I did it in Finland, and Yursinov saw it and asked me to run the same thing with TPS. And Saku Koivu was like 18 years old, and all kinds of Hanna Verta and all that were on that team. So I was guest coach for Yursinov. But I ended up, working with Johanny for all of those years, and we wrote the program for Austria and all that. But I learned more from him. And then what happened, it really influenced my teaching, because my last 13 years teaching, I ended up with double classes. So from 48 to 60 kids in a small gym. And the way he organized things and all this, and the little games and all these, I could keep every kid busy. And we ran all kinds of tournaments with rules, and, just his method of coaching just helped me so much get through that, because before that I would have had half the kids sitting down, like I saw when I went back to the school, junior high kids sitting down with nothing to do. They're never going to get in trouble. And I kept everybody busy and ran a really good program, because I, basically learned that from Juuso. So he was the biggest influence on me was Johanny, for sure.
Peter, what I'm hearing Tom say, Tom is running a hockey school for U15 prospects, and a lot of the kids that are hoping to play for him next year and be drafted by him will be there. Tom, my question is, you've drawn the line at 20 players.
No,
And,
20.
Yeah, but I'm saying, how much more good can be done running a school like that with a larger number of players, so they can benefit from it, and your concept of stations and keeping active, is that something to consider moving forward?
Well, there's kind of a critical mass that you can't do some things because too many people are standing around. So we're considering whether to let in more kids and add, have 3 goalies, but that's, can do it either way. Like in Jasper, we did the same thing, and we had kids from 6 years old to 16 on the ice at the same time, and 6 little nets. There's usually no goalies at them, so you can, you take whatever number you have and go with it. So I don't know.
Peter, how much of what we're talking about here, I don't know if you have a formal contract with the Minor Hockey Association, but with the mentorship work you do with communities and teams now, is there any takeaways from this? Anything that you would move forward and experiment with?
Well, there are, especially from this past season, and certainly, always listening to what you guys are saying. I want to dig a little deeper in with these minor hockey coaches and find out what their end game is. Because are you doing it because you like the sport and your kid's involved and you get to be on the ice because your kid is on the team? Do you have an ambition of moving forward in the coaching ranks? It's hard, right? Because it's hard to make a living coaching, because until you get to some very high levels, right, it doesn't really pay that well. And you probably have other skills that in the real world, if you will, for lack of a better way to put it, you're making more money. So what is your end game? Do you actually want to become a coach? Is that going to happen at some point? And even at the college level, like I say, with these younger guys that are getting and being these head coaches, what's your end game? I mean, because they're all coming out of college with a degree that again, initially they could probably make more money and are making more money as a whatever it might be, maybe in finance, because I see a lot of that with these guys, as opposed to being a head coach. So how do we move forward? Do we, as we talk about, it's easy with players, right? Because you're young, you're playing, and you want to keep playing and playing, get to the higher levels, and that is your goal. So as an adult, how do we cultivate, lack of a better way to put it, better or more experienced or coaches who can understand more about the development piece with these younger players? A bit of a tangent, I get it, from what your question was, but I think that part is important when you ask, like, what do you learn and what have you seen? That's what I've seen. I've seen to some degree, people who are resistant to learning because either it's an ego or maybe they just feel like they know enough for the level they're coaching. And then I've seen the other group of younger people that are super enthusiastic and open to anything that you want to say. But is there something, a way to teach the coaches other than, like, Canada has its coaching development program, right? USA Hockey has that. I was an instructor in that for many years. So moving forward, how do we do that? What is there a vehicle to do that, to actually create coaches? We want to create elite players, but there's really I don't see that much in place to create necessarily elite coaches. There's information on how to coach, but all these nuances and things we talk about, I don't see a lot of that.
Well, that's kind of why I do my Facebook thing, to help guys out. But you can only do so much there. But that, because like I went to that conference, there was 240 coaches from 40 countries. The guys that I saw India on the back of shirts. There's China, all kinds of. A guy from Turkey sat with us the whole time, and I'd met him before. So they're all thirsting for, like what you say, and how do we get that to them? And some of them have good programs in their countries. Like Great Britain has gone from a nothing place to they only lost 4-2 to Canada, and they I think they won a game or two in the World Championships. So they must be doing something right, I'm assuming. And so your question is, how do you know what people want to get from it, and how do you get them that information? It's tough questions.
Yeah, well,
Peter, you said, what's your end game? What do you mean by that?
so are you someone that's coaching in youth hockey because you want experience and you hope to maybe, I don't know, coach high school, prep school, maybe coach college someday? Do you have the experience and wherewithal to maybe try to be a pro coach at some level? Like, what is where are you at? Because it's tough, right? Because you've got your job, you've got your wife, you've got your kids, and you got your salary and your benefits, and you come, hey, honey, I want to start out as an assistant coach on a Division III hockey team, and I can make probably almost $20,000 a year. What do you say? Probably not going to go. That conversation is probably not going to go very well.
Well, my question is, why? Why do you do what you do, Peter? Tom, why do you do what you do? I know why I do what I do.
Well, I do what I do because I feel like one of the luckiest people on the planet, to be honest with you. Having been able to coach at the NCAA level, right? I think there's what total now 60, 61, 62 Division I teams and about 85 of the rest. So, for that period of time, when I was coaching, I had the job that only 150 people in the entire country had, right? Head coach of a men's college hockey team. So I just felt so fortunate to have gotten to that point, and I get excited about if I can help someone else grow and maybe get to that same kind of a level, and if not, I know we can work together and we can get better. So that's kind of been my motivation with anything I've ever done. Same thing when I talked to Wally about when I was in horticulture with my family for 40 plus years. Anytime I bump into anybody that is interested in horticulture in any way, I want to help them out. I want to give them knowledge that I had so they can have the same great experience that I had, regardless of what it is.
Tom, what's your why?
Well, really similar, Peter. And it kind of suits my personality. I remember in elementary school organizing teams and having tournaments with my friends. And then you had to make the 12-year-old team in hockey when I was, so I'm going through elementary school. And so I organized a St. Charles school team and challenged Richmond school to a game. And we did that. And I thought I had to be a goalie too, because I outgrew my skates. And I got my sister's skates, or white tube skates, that were like 5 sizes too big for me. Bobby Orr couldn't have skated in these things. So I'm trying to skate, and of course, the leather's on the ice half the time. People said, well, you got weak ankles, you better be a goalie. So for a little while, I wanted to be a goalie. So I was a goalie at that time. But I did organize stuff, and it kind of suits what I do. And, that's why I became a phys ed teacher, and kind of always had a passion for hockey. And, a phys ed teacher, you coach all kinds of sports, right? Just like you have, Wally. And, George offered all those courses and everything for years with guys coming in, and I took them all and tried to get pretty knowledgeable, and, kind of just like doing it. And right now I continue on because one of the main reasons is I coach with my son. I wasn't coaching, and they called him to coach a team. He said, well, if my dad will help me. So we coach together. So, that's an old man's reason. But I've always enjoyed it. And I ended up coaching college because I got a call one day while I was teaching junior high, and someone was taking over the state team, and he'd been a goalie and really didn't know how to run practices. And the coach had quit, and he was the assistant coach. So he was going to be the head coach, but he just said, I need someone to run practices. So they called me out of the blue one day and said, do you want to run the practices at state? And, I was always pretty good at that. So I said, sure. So I ran the practices one year, and like totally by myself. Because the other guy used to come and just say, okay, Tom, you take over and leave. And then he'd run the games. But the next 3 years, I ended up being the head coach. But, so a lot of things happen. You just kind of fall into them out of the blue. That was that. And Mike Johnson coming saying, why don't you come join us at UFC and all this kind of stuff. So I just enjoy coaching. That's probably why. And going to these conferences, I love going to them. I see people I know, and I brought a thumb drive with my 1,500 PDFs on it, and a few guys took it and copied it onto their hard drive, and they really appreciated it, and got to meet a lot of people and listen to some pretty good stuff. And Prague is an incredible city, so get those kind of experiences from it, and also coaching in Salzburg for a year and being brought to Vienna to in-servicer coaches for a couple of years in a row. All that's kind of neat.
Well, Simon Sinek is sort of a leadership guru up here. Is his name known in the States, Peter?
Not. I mean, I'm not familiar with it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he is or isn't.
Well, he's there's a number of authors like Malcolm Gladwell. They've written books on leadership and coaching, and Simon is a guy, and the first thing he says is, if you're a leader in an organization, is know your why. And listening to both of you, you're doing it because you love the sport and you're learning something every day from it, which is satisfying. And I think both of you, particularly Tom, he's doing it to share. And he would like people to make use of whatever he's creating. He's giving it away. And I don't know that there's anybody on the planet who has a library of resources that can be used. And Tom, I don't know if you followed up with the coaches site, but I know that
contacted.
They're interested. My material is sort of the shark stuff. And it's not as specific and purposeful as yours, Tom. So hopefully you can take and manage that. But Peter, I had one of the coaches in our association at U15. I asked him the question, why does he coach? And his answer was to get as many kids into AAA hockey as he could. And I suggested what was more important was, what are they going to do when they're done playing hockey? And how are you going to influence them? So you've got coaches like that who are outcome driven, achievement driven. And I think the bottom line of what we do for the good of the game and the sharing is that everybody we work with, the young coaches developing leadership, the captains were developing, the team and the influence of the players we're working with. And that goes back to John Wooden being asked by a reporter after his 12th national championship, what do you think of your team? And he said, ask me in 25 years. And so that to me is sort of the bottom line here. The why of coaching is, we can get better at X's and O's, and we can get better at leadership. And actually, this group knows more than anybody about the game and how to deliver it at all ages. But we also understand that we don't know that much. That's why we keep talking. So while we're sharing information with others, I've got more questions and answers than I've ever had. Like Tom, I'm scratching my head with Girls Hockey Calgary and the lack of fundamental teaching of tactical skills to create space and time and bridging the gap between applying them in a game and thinking and executing the skills, decision making. And it's not rocket science. It's a matter of do the right stuff, the right amount at the right time, the combination of deliberate and random practice, random being game-like transition practice, as Time calls it, smarter hockey players. So that's really amusingly frustrating for me to have had formal.
You're a teacher, and these guys that come in, a lot of them are ex-players, but they, how do you deliver what you know? And it doesn't matter what you do. My wife was the head of a unit in the hospital, and the frustrating part was, for people, the nurses, the other nurses she was in charge of, to think on their feet and take the knowledge and apply it. And I think that's the frustration always is, Peter, not everybody knows how to teach. That's for sure. It's
it's interesting. Tom, I watched a game last weekend. I may have told you this. U15 head coach, played in the NHL for 10 years, and he's one of the strongest, knowledgeable coaches in our association. Young, enthusiastic, and vocal. And he's telling players what to do out loud all the time. And I'm just watching, and I've told him before, I said, you only need to tell the players what's happening on the ice. Yelling and telling a player what to do on the ice, you're distracting them. I said this last year, and he recorded himself, and he learned from it. I mean, for an ex-NHL guy to go through the trouble of recording himself not once but twice, he wants to get better. But you can't change who you are as a driven former athlete becoming a coach. So the last game on Sunday, Tom, the game is 1-0. They're winning. The other team's applying pressure in their zone. I'm right beside their bench in the stands with the manager. And the pressure's on, and he's screaming at the D to ice it, ice it. And the D stopped, faked one way, went the other, made a perfect pass to the winger who got it out of the zone. And I said to the manager, I said, there's where you can't play the game out loud and take away their ability to make their decisions because they're on the ice. And I think that's the fortunate part, Tom, is you give the kids the tools and you let them apply the tools with transition games at your practice. And I know small area games, well, a game is a game. Possession changes back and over, and the joker rule of passing and getting open is critical. And these are fundamentals to playing the game. So I think, in generally speaking, we don't play the game. And I'm talking provincially at the provincial championships. They worked the game. They were structured. They worked hard, but there really wasn't much passing, much natural play. And it got down to, as Tom said, it's 1-on-5 hockey. for the most part. So fortunately, we get to watch the NHL, and they really know how to use each other. But it's got to be frustrating coaching and hoping that those players someday will be able to do some semblance of what we're observing in the playoffs.
Well, they're all the 1 out of 1,000 that make it, so they're pretty elite.
Well, I think I look at coaching and I think of Gardner McDougall, who won 20 plus national college championships at UND. Peter, you don't know this. You might know this, but he was one of our guests the season before this. He's well known in Eastern Canada, and there's a major junior league there. And one of the teams that's hosting the Memorial Cup that year, they were out of the running early, but they're hosting it. And he got hired to take over the team with 30 days before the Memorial Cup. And he took over the team and brought his athletic trainer. They did a fitness regime. He did all the sports things you need to do. He team built. He ended up winning the Memorial Cup. So he's doing the right stuff, the right amount, the right way. This guy can take a team like that in a short term and transition them to playing a team game that's the best in the country at that age level in literally 30 days.
Well, he just went 43-0 this year.
He went 43-0 this year.
He coached the under-20 team and went undefeated. I don't think he lost a game in the 2023-24 season.
Yeah. Now he's hired by the Quebec Major Junior League. He's going to coach in the Major Junior League last year, but he's a real authentic person. We've had him on as a guest before, and I'm hoping going to give him a call again to come on and talk about his journey, what he's learned, and some of the things we've talked about. But guys, it's been a great morning here. We're at an hour and 46 in my recording. And Peter, Tom, I really didn't know where we were going to go, but I like today's session. I've broken it up into 5 parts in my note taking that I'll edit and share because they're all really important topics. And Tom, the PDFs that you send me, I'm sharing them with all the Sharks and all the coaches and encourage them to pass it on so that whoever gets it can do the same. Not only get it and use it, but get it, use it, and pass it on to others. And there's that ripple effect to help the game.
Now, I just got an email from a coaching conference in Prague, and they sent the PowerPoint overheads. You guys want them?
Yeah.
Anything you can send, absolutely.
Yeah, so I just got them, so I'll send them along to you.
Thank you.
Now, Tom, you shared a bunch of pictures from the conference of the screen with me already. Have you not?
Yeah, but those are random ones I took.
Yeah.
All of them.
But these are all of them.
Yeah, they're really good because later on, I think you can go to their website for free, watch the presentations.
Yeah.
It was a little soft skills centered.
Yeah.
Like I think some of those people from those 40 countries that don't have a real hockey culture would have really appreciated a lot more meat and potatoes. But, it was, pretty good stuff anyways. You can't do everything, and so you do what you can do.
Yep. Well, guys, thanks for getting up in the morning and coming in. And next week we won't Thursday, Tom, we're gonna meet on, what day have we meet for coffee for next Thursday, right?
Thursday, 9 o'clock, I think.
Yeah, 9 o'clock at Cadence, so we won't be doing a session that week. But Peter, I'll take some pictures and send them to you of the group and the coffee house that we always met at over many, many years to start this sort of a unique group called the Sharks.
We'll have one for me, straight up black, no sugar.
Okay,
Oh, you're
all
welcome.
right.
Yes.
Okay,
Just-
man. Take
Your
care.
pleasure.
All right, enjoy the day, fellas. Thank